Hello and welcome to this video lesson covering the character of Arthur Birling from An Inspector Calls. Before I continue, just the usual reminder that there are plenty more of these video lessons over on mrhonline.co.uk. It's mrhonline.co.uk. That's me, Mr. H. And a reminder that all these videos are going to be targeted at the top band. So if you're looking to improve your grade and get into the 7, 8, 9, then these videos are for you. Even if you're currently stuck on a 4 or 5, a grade 4 or 5, then there's plenty in these videos to get you up to that 5, 6, 7 and beyond, hopefully. Okay, so without further ado, this is just going to focus on the character of Arthur Birling in Priestley's An Inspector Calls. Okay, so first up, who is he? Well, state the obvious. He's a wealthy, prosperous capitalist who owns a factory and who was also once the Lord Mayor of Brumley. He is happily celebrating the engagement of his daughter, Sheila, to the son of Sir and Lady Croft, that's Gerald Croft, whom he hopes to enter into business with to become even more successful. So, is he really happy that his daughter's marrying Gerald because she's in love with him, or because he sees the business opportunities that this union will offer in the future? Priestley uses Arthur Birling to symbolise the dysfunctional capitalist ideologies of the Edwardian era. A lot of fancy words there. Remember Priestley's own political views. He was a socialist. He believed in community. He believed that we needed to look after each other. He believed that we needed to share the wealth amongst everybody. And Arthur Birling is the character he uses to challenge the capitalist views where private ownership of wealth is at its core. He wants the audience to dislike Birling, therefore opening themselves up to the possibility of social change and a fairer society for all. Remember, the Second World War has just finished. Society is ready for change. They've just suffered through 2 world wars in 30 years. And evidence for that change can be seen in the political landscape at the time, with obviously Churchill and the Tories winning the Second World War, clinching the Second World War for us. But within 9-10 months, there was a landslide Labour victory. So society was ready for change. And Priestley saw this as a great opportunity to kind of wipe the slate clean. Okay, so you must, in any exam question, talk about stage directions. Okay, they're Priestley's direct line to the actors performing playing the roles, but also to us studying the play. We get his intentions. Okay, so with Arthur Birling, this is the quotation from the stage directions. He's described as a heavy-looking, rather portentous man, rather provincial in his speech. Okay, so pause the video for a second. I'm going to look at heavy-looking, portentous, and provincial. I want you to think about what you can infer from those 3 parts of this quotation. Okay, so pause the video. Okay, I presume you pause. Okay, so heavy looking. What could you interpret from heavy looking? Well, this could imply a slightly intimidating character, or simply one who has enjoyed the excesses of living his wealth and success have allowed. Okay, so he's used to the fine things in life. Could be that physically he's quite dominating and an intimidating presence on the stage, and that's certainly how he starts the play in the opening scenes before the inspector's arrival. What about portentous? Well, this implies an arrogance or sense of self-importance, someone who likes the sound of their own voice. Again, if you look at the dialogue in the opening scenes, it's dominated by Birling himself. He's trying to educate and pass on his wisdom to the youngsters. But of course, because the play is set in 1912, but written in 1945-46, this allows Priestley to use dramatic irony to show how much of a fool how much poor judgment Arthur Birling has. Some examples, obviously, the Titanic is unsinkable, the Germans, they don't want war, and so on. Okay, and what about provincial? Rather provincial in his speech. It means he talks with a bit of an accent, like That was awful. I apologise. Okay, it just means he's from a more rural, lower class background, unlike his wife and the Crofts. Remember, we learn in the opening stage directions that Mrs. Birling is her husband's social superior. So he's upwardly mobile. He's desperate to get into the upper classes. And so he's married somebody from the upper classes, and he wants his daughter to do the same, to try and desperately get his own family into the upper echelons of society. But he's not himself. He's born into a more rural background. And what's her appeal in marrying below her social status? Well, as we've learned, he's a successful capitalist. He's obviously got a lot of money, so maybe she was attracted to his wealth. Okay, so in the opening scenes, then moving on from the stage directions, we see how this character manifests itself. He's proud of his achievements. He's obsequious. That just means he wants to ingratiate himself to Gerald, because Gerald's from the upper classes. His parents are Sir and Lady Croft, so he tries to impress Gerald by buying the port he knows Gerald's father drinks, and by informing him of the likelihood of his pending knighthood. He's trying to impress Gerald. I mean, obviously there's this party, this celebration, this engagement party. There's the absence of Gerald's parents, so maybe they're not too thrilled by Gerald marrying below his station. But Arthur Birling would be acutely aware of this. So to try and ingratiate himself to the Crofts, he makes sure he tells Gerald that, as far as he's aware, he's going to become Sir Arthur Birling himself. He also likes to educate the young in the ways of the world and dominates the opening exchanges. His arrogance and poor judgment can be seen in the following stated beliefs. Community is a load of nonsense, he says. The Germans don't want war, and the Titanic is absolutely unsinkable, as I've mentioned, allowing Priestley the use of dramatic irony. So some quotations to use, because you have to, this is an essay based question on most exam papers, so you're going to need to have a couple of banked quotations. So here's a couple I've selected for you. I speak as a hard-headed, practical man of business. Now he says this more than once in like 2 or 3 of the pages. Points to his pride and links to the theme of capitalism. I mean, he repeats this declaration a couple of times to reinforce this message to the audience. Some of his poor judgment: the Titanic, unsinkable, absolutely unsinkable. Again, dramatic irony. Just highlight what a poor judge Birling is. And so the audience are looking at him thinking, you're an idiot. It sank on its maiden voyage. You're an idiot. There were 2 world wars the Germans didn't want, allegedly. So again, how are they going to respond to this? Well, they're supposed to dislike this attitude and his arrogance. Community and all that nonsense. Remember, we've just lived through 2 world wars. So actually community and looking out for each other was at the very forefront, at the top of people's wish list. His attitude to responsibility and socialism is important to reflect on Priestley's own views here and his background. And Birling, his belief that a man has to mind his own business and look after himself and his own, reinforcing his own capitalist views. It's actually when he's speaking this line that there's a ring at the door and the inspector turns up. So the inspector interrupts Birling in the middle of this line where he's talking about his attitudes about responsibility and looking out for others. And that kind of foreshadows the clash between the inspector and Birling, as the inspector, representing Priestley's socialist beliefs, challenges Birling's capitalist ones. And just to sum up then, his anti-community position: we're not all mixed up like bees in a hive. Okay, so hopefully some of those quotations you'll be able to recall. Write them on a post-it note, stick them up around your room, take a photograph of this screen, this screen now, and have it as your kind of wallpaper on your mobile phones. I'm not sure if wallpaper is the right term. I'm a bit out of touch on that. But just so it's a visual reminder of you, and have that on a rotation with other quotations perhaps. Okay, as the play progresses, then the inspector's arrival. So this this is where Birling is interrupted in mid-speech by the inspector's arrival, which foreshadows the ensuing challenge of his capitalist views by the inspector's investigation. Remember Priestley's own socialist views here. And a reminder of the line, a man has to mind his own business and look after himself and his own. And the bell rings. Okay, he's cut down in mid-sentence. After the inspector has left, has Birling's character evolved in any way like Sheila's has? Well, no. He's unchanged. He can see no ill in what he's done. This suits Priestley's intention to present Birling as too much of a capitalist to change, too selfish to change. He even says there's every excuse for what both your mother and I did. He says it to Eric, justifying their treatment of Eva Smith. I remember Sheila says about her own parents, it frightens me the way you talk. So they are still the same, even though at this stage they think that they've been victims of a hoax, the inspector's not real. It still doesn't change. They still treated a girl the way that the inspector said they did, but they don't care. There's no scandal. There's no public scandal coming. So they're just having a nice little joke and a laugh about it now. But Eric and Sheila, because they're the younger generation, maybe Priestley uses them to offer some hope for the future. They feel very different to how they started the play 2 hours earlier. Again, we've been had, that's all. Ignoring the fact that he sacked a girl, his daughter had a girl fired, his son got a girl pregnant and stole money from the business, and that his daughter's fiancé has an affair. Conveniently forgetting all of that to in exchange for the relief he feels at having not having to face any kind of public inquiry as to how his behaviour affected a young girl's life. Okay, so that covers Birling's character, a few quotations, his links to Priestley, why Priestley is using Birling. I mean, you could say that, you know, Birling is a vehicle that Priestley uses to highlight the flaws in capitalist held views, for example. Any question, Birling can be incorporated into obviously his own character, but how he interacts with other characters as well. Also on the themes of capitalism and socialism, talked about that. You must talk about context. It'd be roughly about 20% of your marks for this question about incorporating like Priestley's intentions, his socialist views, and so on. So any question that arises on social responsibility and community, on class and status and his upwardly mobile intentions, generation and gender. How does he treat his wife and daughter of the upper classes or the upper middle classes, but also then how he treats Eva Smith and other girls that work for him in the factory. Remember, he's completely dependent upon the work that these girls do in his factory for his wealth. So how does he treat them? You know, could he treat them in a far more compassionate fashion? Well, of course he can. Generation, older generation stuck in his ways, unable, unwilling to change, perhaps. Compare that and contrast that to the younger generation, in particular his own daughter Sheila and Eric to an extent. And then obviously his links to the inspector, and that can be linked to the capitalism versus socialism debate, and he goes head to head with the inspector through the course of the play. Right, okay, I think that's a lot covered on Arthur Birling. I think you've got everything in here to form the basis of a top band, like a grade 7 and beyond, answering your GCSE exam. So the best of luck with that, and keep checking back in with Mr. H online. Loads more videos, video lessons there. Lovely. All right, see you guys. Bye.